Hello everyone, my name is PJ, and welcome back to the Void in another episode of the Hoarder. In the last episode, the heroes finally managed to reach the town of Overleaf, carrying a very exhausted Balthazar in tow, dragging him along on Zaymot's shield, using it as a sled. When they reach the borders of the village, before they can even see it, they are stopped by a group of elven sentries, who approach them in order to figure out if they really are who they appear to be. They are expected, but the leaf stone is what proves their identities. They are allowed through, and when they reach the entrance of the village, an elderly wood elf cleric, dressed in long brown robes, comes down the stairs leading from this big village built on wooden catwalks and suspension bridges. He comes down and he sees the person that he was told to expect. He looks at Balthazar and says, "Serge, my poor boy, I'd heard that you had trouble moving. I didn't realize it had gotten this bad." And then Balthazar weakly points to Serge and says, "That's Serge. I'm Balthazar." "Oh, so there's two of you?" "Yeah, this happened running away from a yethhound." "A yethhound?" And then he looks up at the sky. See the time of day. Never mind. He takes the leaf stone from them and tells them that he can restore Serge to his former self, but they will have to wait until morning because he currently does not have the spell prepared. In the meantime, he takes Balthazar to a group of young ladies who agreed to take care of Balthazar, who they call a poor, big, strong man. Emphasis on man. And it's at this point that the party begins making lots of funny rage jokes. Careful, you can only do that so many times per day. And when you do it, it lasts for an entire minute. Oh, but you have to keep attacking during the entire duration. As they're led through the village of Overleaf by this cleric who introduces himself as Eldrenthal, they see lots of little things like bioluminescent fungi decorating the town, and pixies and sprites and other fey creatures, all living together peacefully. He takes them to the temple of Corellin Larethian, and it is there that they exchange notes, everything that they know about the Skull Crushers and the Crystal Rod and the Hoarder and the Skull Crusher's new warlock, who they get a bit more information about him from Eldrenthal. He tells them that the warlock has always been a member of this clan. He left at a young age because he was born in Orog, but recently came back with newfound warlock powers, and ever since, they've been attacking village after village, seemingly in search of something, never actually killing as many people or taking as many trophies or as much loot as they used to. So after everyone does some quick shopping, they all turn in for the night, and the next morning, when they go to meet with Eldrenthal, they find that he is just outside of the temple, speaking to the giant eagle that they had seen the other morning. Eldrenthal explains that the bird's name is Lorelei, and she's missing something, a shiny object that she was keeping in her nest that she lost a while ago. The description of the object is a long, tube-shaped object with a shiny, transparent orb at the end. The party assumes that she is talking about the crystal rod, and they make a note of the location of her nest so that they can look into it later on. After that, Eldrenthal finally cures Serge. By doing so, he breaks the leaf stone into pieces, and inside that stone was the diamond dust needed as the spell component for greater restoration. As the party is celebrating Serge's restoration, a sprite shows up and delivers terrible news to Eldrenthal. A group of orcs is on their way here. As Eldrenthal goes to prepare for battle, the heroes naturally agree to help, even though they're square and they don't actually owe the elves anything, or vice versa. But they have a score to settle with the Skull Crushers, and they're going to settle it any way that they can. So Eldrenthal explains that his scouts have told him that there are actually 3 groups of orcs, one from the northwest, one from the north, and one from the southwest. The one from the northwest is the main brunt of the force, but it's only acting as a distraction so that the northern and southwestern groups can get into the village while the elves are distracted. The PCs are assigned to make up a strike force of sorts to take out the southwestern group, while another group of scouts takes out the northern group, and while the brunt of Overleaf's forces take on the middle group, and they form a defensive fortification to keep them from even getting close to the village. The heroes request aid, and they do not roll high enough, so Eldrenthal just gives them one scout, a female Wood Elf scout named Avalar. So they head on out, with Avalar in the lead. She has better perception and better stealth than any of them, so she is perfect for the job. She sees orcs coming along and warns the PCs. The PCs immediately begin setting up a trap, using a piton that they hammer into the ground, a rope that they stretch from the piton, which is hidden behind a tree, to another tree, and then they cover up the rope and leaves. Balthazar is holding on to the rope behind the other tree, and everyone else is in different hiding spots. When the orcs come close, Surge uses a bunch of minor illusion spells in order to lure the orcs over to the trees, and then makes a small illusion of a wounded orc asking for help. The leader of these 5 orcs rushes forward, and when he does, Balthazar pulls on the rope and causes the orc to trip. And as soon as he does, everyone bursts out of hiding and surprises the orcs. With the orcs surprised, they manage to kill 4 of them before any of them even have the chance to act, and then Balthazar intimidates the last remaining orc into surrendering. They tie him up to a tree and begin interrogating him by beating him up. Now, if you've heard about interrogation tactics before, you know that torture is not the answer. Not because it's immoral, but just because it does not work. The PCs kept asking him for information on the rest of the orc horde, like the rest of their squadrons and stuff, their formations, their directions, how many there are. The orc doesn't know any of that. The orc has his instructions, and that's what he was following. He doesn't have the information that they want, but every time he tried to tell them that, they beat him up. So he lied, and he told them what they wanted to hear, which is what happens when you use torture to interrogate someone. I should probably consider keeping a record of the non-good things my good aligned PCs do. After they were finished with him, and they just left him there to die, Balthazar took his great axe, upgrading from the battle axe, which he always used two-handed anyway. It's a straight upgrade, so why not? And they continued forward. The next group of orcs that Avalar spots is led by an orc Claw of Luthik, a cleric of the orc goddess Luthik, the Cave Mother. They try to hide behind some trees and set up an ambush, but they fail their stealth checks. The Claw of Luthik is able to hear them, and using her sense of smell, she is able to locate the presence of an elf, which orcs hate. She immediately points out the location of Avalar, and they all begin attacking her. Just her, focusing entirely on her, even when the other 4 characters come out of hiding. Avalar almost died during this fight, but they managed to protect her. They managed to use some potions of healing and some curing spells in order to help her stay on her feet and not die. During the fight, the Claw of Luthik cast a spell using this platinum ring that she was wearing that connected her ethereally to another orc who was wearing a matching platinum band. The spell is Warding Bond, and it makes the orc that she's connected to stronger and take less damage. The party doesn't even realize this, but they make the better choice to simply ignore that other orc and attack the Claw instead, making the fight a little bit easier in the process. When they defeat the remaining orcs, they take the platinum bands, so that maybe someday Zaymot will actually prepare that spell and use it, now that they actually have the component needed for it. Surge decides to take the Claw's holy symbol because he knows Orcish and he can read it. He knows that it says cave entrance, but he doesn't know enough about Orcish lore to determine that it's it's just the symbol of Luthik. They assume that it's some kind of key to get into the lair, but it's not. Every claw of Luthik carries that. It's their holy symbol. He also takes one of her claws, because Surge has made a habit of keeping trophies for all of their kills. I don't think I ever mentioned that Surge is wearing the Goblin Jester's hat, and has been ever since. After finishing the fight, an invisible, awakened bear shows up and uses this necklace that he was wearing to turn visible again and begins talking to the party. Overleaf is actually populated by many awakened animals. That way their enemies don't know the difference between talking animals and druids in wild shape. He tells the PCs that all 3 of the squadrons of orcs that were pincer attacking Overleaf were all distractions, because the war wagon that they brought with them in order to defend was not in any of those groups. It's kind of in the middle, off to the side. So the bear tells them how to get to the war wagon, and then agrees to take Avalar back to Overleaf, because she wasn't actually being all that effective. She never landed a single arrow shot and she almost died. So she and the rest of the party all agreed that she should just go home. Now, unfortunately, even though she wasn't all that effective, she was still taking hits for the party. And the party probably would have gotten attacked a lot worse by the claw and her 2 orcs had she not been there. So Avalar's presence still means that the party got 20% less XP for those 2 fights. So the party follows the bear's tracks back to the way it originally came, toward the war wagon. As they're following the tracks and being stealthy, they see Eldrenthal over to the side, to their right, dealing with a huge horde of orcs all by himself and not even armed. The orcs tell him that he's clearly outnumbered, and Eldrenthal just smiles, holds up his holy symbol, and a bright flash of light just disintegrates all of them. In an instant, he just destroys 12 orcs. And when there's nothing left of them but little piles of ash, he just casually walks forward toward the next group of orcs for him to take out. The PCs finally find the war wagon. It is being guarded by 2 regular orcs, an orc Eye of Grump standing on top and keeping a lookout, and it is being pulled by several chained up dwarven slaves, who are all just standing there in rags, just waiting for their next orders. The party gets the idea, or rather, Surge gets the idea, and he focuses all of his efforts this combat in doing specifically this: to destroy the wheels of the wagon, so that it can't be rolled as easily. By the time the fight is over, Surge has destroyed both wheels, and the wagon has toppled over, and is now leaning at about a 45-degree angle. I should mention that the party has not taken any damage all day long. The only damage any of them took was Balthazar, when he was fighting mano a mano with one of the 2 regular orcs in this 3rd fight. And while he was raging, the orc landed a critical hit on him, while he also had temporary hit points from his Storm Herald Tundra effect. So, minus the temporary hit points and cutting all the damage he took in half with this critical hit, Balthazar took a total of 3 damage. And that was all the damage they took all day. So after having his one-on-one honorable duel with this orc, Balthazar climbs up onto the cart in order to try and finish off the Eye of Grumsh, but it is Zaymot who lands the killing blow using his spiritual hammer. He knocks the orc into the cart, through the tarp on the top, and he lands on top of a big pile of swords, which finishes him off. And as he's laying there bleeding out and dying, he does one last thing. He casts thaumaturgy in order to make his voice super loud, and he announces to the other orcs in Orcish that the war wagon has been compromised and that they all need to withdraw. So the heroes only have a few moments to loot as much shit from the war wagon as they can and get out of there before the orcs come to claim the war wagon and escape. While they're looting the wagon, Chit is rescuing the dwarven slaves, who, unbounded, run off into the forests, except for one of them, which notices Zaymot. He recognizes him from Rivercrest, and he tells Zaymot that his father, Borin, is still in the lair, and asks Zaymot if he's going to go rescue him, to which he assures him that he most definitely is, as soon as he gets the chance. The PCs are out of the way and out of sight by the time the other orcs show up to claim the war wagon. A few of them pick it up from the side that the wheels were destroyed on and begin pulling it and pushing it themselves, because orcs really give a shit about their war wagons. While the orcs are retreating, one of them receives a sending. From who, they do not know. But after he finishes the sending, he announces to the other orcs using his own, this is also an Eye of Groomsh who received it, using his own thaumaturgy, he announces to all the orcs that they are not heading back to the lair, that it is not here anymore, so that they need to head west. What's west? The party doesn't know. The party doesn't know what's not there or where they're heading now. But when they get back to town, they find Eldrenthal and the others are already planning something special. The orcs in the Skullcrusher lair are all leaving. Not all of them. Some of them are staying behind to hold the fort, but it's not just the few remaining orcs that attacked Overleaf today that are heading to the west. Most of the remaining Skullcrushers from the headquarters are also heading west. Whatever they're heading for must be very important. And in the meantime, since they don't know where they're going to infiltrate the Skullcrusher lair in order to free all of their slaves and take the mountain. Since one of those slaves is Zaymot's father, Eldrenthal has the decency to give the task of rescuing the slaves to the PCs. Now he gives them an ultimatum, though. There are two entrances to the Skullcrusher mountain. One of them is in the south, and is what the red fangs of Shargos fly out of on their giant bat mounts when they want to go on raids. That is less guarded, but it's also more difficult to get to. Now the northern one is easier to get to, and will be much more heavily guarded. However, the slave pen that Zaymot's father is being kept in is in the northern half of the Skullcrusher lair. So even though there will be more opposition, it will take less time to reach Zaymot's father. After discussing it for a bit, and putting it up to a vote, the party agrees that they're going into the north. Guns are blazing, burst into the front door.